Well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening on our second virtual star party with Slooh during Hill Country Night Sky Month. We are very excited to be partnering with Slooh and particularly with John this evening, who is going to be running an amazing set of images for us. And we'll be doing two sessions. So we'll be doing one session with Slooh, and we'll take a break and talk a little bit about Hill Country Night Sky Month and what's been going on in the Hill Country. And then we'll have a second run of great images, some wonderful conversation with John, and then wrap up with some Q&A and some conversations about things to look for in the night sky. So I guess without further ado, John, should we get things rolling? How are we looking over there on the scopes?
Yeah, we definitely should. Scopes are looking good in the Canary Islands, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Before I do that, I just want to let everybody know I did come prepared with some red glasses of myself, but I decided to keep my normals on so that I can see the screen and everything. But I'm very happy to be here and very happy to have partnered with the Hill Country Alliance's Night Sky Month Star Party. Slooh, first, let me get my screen up here. Where's the screen? Here it is. So greetings, everybody. Welcome. Like I said, my name is John Bovair, Dr. John H. Bovair. I'm the Director of Curriculum at Slooh. And Slooh, we're dedicated to making real-world, real-time space exploration accessible for everyone. Slooh is a scalable platform that teaches people how to explore space via remote control of a network of online telescopes. So we have turnkey virtual classrooms with integrated curriculum for fourth grade all the way through college. We have teacher professional development and also adult education. These images that you're seeing here, this is looking through the telescopes live. So if there happened to be a satellite that passed into the field of view of the telescope, we'll catch this here. So Slooh basically is a vibrant community of citizen astronomers sharing their knowledge and discoveries of the universe using an arsenal of powerful telescopes at premier observatories in both hemispheres. Slooh provides a way for students and everybody to explore space, capture celestial objects, learn about the fantastic sights that are unveiled by our robotic, powerful, state-of-the-art telescopes. Our telescopes, they broadcast live every night from our flagship observatory at the Institute of Astrophysics of the Canary Islands and our Chile Observatory in association with the Catholic University of Chile. So an advantage of having telescopes spanning both hemispheres means that we can capture celestial objects from the entire night sky every single night. So the image that we were looking at before here, I've trained the telescopes on the Pleiades, which is a very fun open star cluster. This open star cluster is dominated by 7 massive blue stars named for the 7 sisters of Greek mythology. The Pleiades, this is one of the closest star clusters to Earth at about 44 light years. Now, can anybody tell me what a light year is? Do we know what a light year is?
It's the same as a regular year, but less calories, right?
That's a good one. Close. A light year is the distance that light travels in 1 year. So while we're looking at the Pleiades live right now, that means that we're actually looking 444 years in the past, because I think I misspoke earlier. The Pleiades is 444 light years away from us. And so even though this is dominated by 7 blue stars, there's actually about 1,000 stars that make up this nebula. And what I think is the coolest thing is we can see some dusty nebula left over from when this group of stars used to be a nebula of gas. I think one fascinating aspect of the Pleiades, and I only have a minute because the way that Slooh's telescopes works is they look at an object for 5 minutes and then they move on to the next mission. So I actually scheduled all of these missions that we're about to see about a week in advance to make sure that I would have them for tonight. So I think So going back, one of the most fascinating aspects of the Pleiades is that every single culture that could see it in their night sky has some myth associated with it. So for example, the Incan Empire from South America believed that the Pleiades was influential over the well-being of all animals. And so the Pleiades was called Koyoka, and it was one of their minor deities. And shamans would actually make sacrifices to Koyoka. But according to tradition, Koyoka is the origin of all of the constellations in the sky and the stars and everything else that we see in the sky. And so it's often referred to as the mothers. Still today, traditional Quechua communities still observe the same respect for the Pleiades that their ancestors did many centuries ago. So I always find that kind of fun about the Pleiades. Now I'm going to kick on over. So this is looking through one of our Canary Island telescopes, but let's see how the skies look in Chile too. In Chile, it just got to be dark enough for missions to go off, and so I scheduled a Saturn, of course, one of the fun planets in the solar system here. So let's see how this looks. It's actually looking pretty good. It's actually still kind of light out in Chile, so we're like just reached that point. So as the minutes tick on, we should be able to see Jupiter a bit clearer. And I also do have to mention that we do have a little bit of light clouds in both Canary Islands and in Chile. So hopefully we'll be able to look through some windows and still be able to see these planets and everything else we're going to be looking at. So we're moving on now from the Saturn to another object. This is another one that I scheduled for us tonight. This one's called 47 Tucani. And I'm going to hit back here so we can see the full extent. So this is another star cluster. But you may notice that this one looks a bit different than the Pleiades. You can see that there's a lot more stars in this star cluster than the one before. And that's because these kind of star clusters are called globular star clusters. And again, I think you can see why they call them globular clusters. It looks very globular in shape. This happens to be the second brightest globular cluster in the Milky Way. You actually have to be in the southern hemisphere in order to see this globular cluster. Believe it or not, if you do find yourself in the southern hemisphere and you do look at this particular globular cluster, it is as big, it's actually just a tad bit bigger than the full moon. So it's pretty impressive to be able to see this in the night sky, like, every night or every night that it's available. This is a massive cluster with more than 500,000 stars crammed into an area of about maybe 120 light years across. To give a little perspective, the Pleiades was about 12 light years across. So this is about 10 times bigger than the Pleiades, but it contains about like 500 times as many stars. So the stellar density in these globular clusters is really massive. Now, if you've been watching the globular star cluster here, you'll notice that the image is changing a little bit. And that's one of the coolest things about Slooh's telescopes is they automatically process the images in real time. So we're continuing to collect light more and more. And as the telescope receives those lights, it's processing the colors and processing the data. And you'll see here in about a minute or so, we'll see a little bit of color. And I think that's really awesome with these globular clusters. One really cool thing. Oh, and if there's ever any questions, please stop me because I'm a freight train and I'm talking about astronomy now. So you'll have to stop me if you want to ask me something. I try and keep my eyes on the chats, but sometimes it's kind of hard to do that. Okay, so one really cool thing about globular star clusters is that they're orbiting above and below the disk of the Milky Way galaxy. You can think of our galaxy as being kind of like a pizza, where there's a disk where most of the stars and gas and where we are located in. And if you go out into a nice dark sky like in the hill country, should be able to see the Milky Way going from one part of the sky all the way across to the other. That's just the disk of our galaxy, but there is things above and below that disk orbiting around the center of the galaxy. And that's basically what these globular clusters are. Those are where they're at. They're above and below the disk of our galaxy. And I tend to think of them as being like the bottom feeders of a fish tank. If there happened to be a star that moved away from the disk of the galaxy, it's going to get swept up into one of the about like 110 globular clusters that we have orbiting around our galaxy. So it's kind of neat. Well, pretty neat, I think. Yeah. So what else? What else can I say? Check this out. So before we go to the next object, I want to show a little bit about the Slooh site. So this is the Slooh dashboard. Whenever you log on, this is what you see first. And I specifically want to show us this object map. This object map, it basically shows everything that you can capture with Slooh's telescopes. Now let me zoom out. And so we have right ascension along the bottom and declination along the side. So every single one of these dots is an object that you can capture with the telescopes. And we can actually filter this a little bit. So I want to show us what I was referring to about where the globular clusters are. So if I look at where just the nebulae are on our database, you see that it has this nice loop right here. This loop is the Milky Way galaxy, the disk of the Milky Way galaxy. There's not too many things that aren't in this particular disk. But if I were to look at where the globular star clusters are, they're kind of all over the place. And in fact, you can kind of see, it seems like they're clustered around this area here. And this happens to be the area of where the center of the galaxy is. So the center of the galaxy, I think, is somewhere about like right here. And so all of these globular clusters are swarming around the center of the galaxy. So wherever we kind of see them clustered around, that's where it is. This was determined back in the early 1920s, actually. More on that here in a moment. Let's jump back on the telescopes. So we are looking at this is a really cool nebula called the Tarantula Nebula, but I want to come back to this. I want to take a look at Canary 1 real quick, because in Canary 1 we have, or not Canary 1, it's actually Canary 3, apologize. We have a galaxy in Canary 3, and this galaxy is called the Andromeda Galaxy. What it should be? Am I off track? Canary 3, 520. Well, that's okay. We'll come back to Andromeda Galaxy, hopefully. Andromeda Galaxy is the nearest galaxy to us. I just wanted to show us that really quickly. But you know, we often hear that Andromeda Galaxy is the closest galaxy, but that's actually not technically true. We do have closer galaxies to us, but they're what are called dwarf galaxies. In particular, there's what's called the Large Magellanic Cloud and the Small Magellanic Clouds. And these are the biggest of the dwarf galaxies, and they're orbiting around the Milky Way. This right here, this is called the Tarantula Nebula. And this is actually within the Large Magellanic Cloud. It's not within our Milky Way. And it happens to be one of the largest star-forming regions in the local group, which the local group is the vicinity of the universe that contains our galaxy, the Andromeda Galaxy, and another galaxy called the Triangulum Galaxies. And it also contains all of the satellite galaxies that are orbiting around all of those. So this is one of the biggest star-forming regions. And the reason why it's so large is because the Large Magellanic Cloud is being pulled towards the Milky Way. And that gravity of our galaxy is pulling at it, and the Tarantula Nebula is kind of leading the way. So as the Large Magellanic Cloud is moving towards the Milky Way, it's causing all of the gas within this galaxy to compress together. Astronomers call this ram pressure. And this induces a bunch of star formation. And that's what we're seeing here. Recent stellar census suggests that there's about 8,800 solar masses of stars, and this is only about 30 million years old. To give a little perspective about that, on Earth 30 million years ago was around the time that Antarctica started to get glaciers on it. So it's pretty really interesting, I think. Let me check out what's in Canary 1 right now. I think there might be something else in there. No. I'm trying to figure out what happened to my Andromeda galaxy. Well, I can't find it. But what we can take a look at is a planet that I had scheduled. This is the planet Uranus. This is the 7th major planet in order from the sun. These images are always live coming from the telescope. So the reason why it has kind of this oval shape is likely due to maybe a wind gust that happened, kind of like move the telescope a little bit as it was collecting light. So we get this little streak here. And Uranus, it's the 7th major planet, like I said. It has a bluish green tint to it due to a bunch of methane that's in its atmosphere. And what's really interesting about that is, see, when I was in school, I was taught that Uranus was one of the 4 gas giant planets, along with Jupiter, Saturn, and Neptune. But nowadays, we actually kind of we separate Jupiter and Saturn from Uranus and Neptune. And so these days, kids are taught that Uranus and Neptune are what are called ice giant planets. And the reason why is because of the composition between all of these planets. Jupiter and Saturn are comprised of mostly hydrogen and helium, which is why they show up the colors that they do. But Uranus and Neptune, they are composed of elements that are heavier than hydrogen and helium. There's a lot of oxygen, carbon, nitrogen, and sulfur within these planets. And like I said, particularly Uranus has a lot of methane in it, and that's why it shows up the color that it is. This planet was not known to the ancient world. The ancient world knew of all the planets going up just to Saturn. And so this planet was discovered in 1781 after the United States became a country, which I think is crazy to think about. This was the first planet that was discovered with a telescope. But it wasn't the first time that humanity looked at it, because on a clear, dark night, Uranus is actually visible to the naked eye. Back then, they thought that it might have been a dim star, or even some folks thought that Uranus was actually a comet. So it's interesting about that. Awesome. So from here, let's check out Chile 1. I think we might have a fun object here. This is called the Trifid Nebula. And this is a beautiful nebula. We're having some color come through. Usually we get a little more color. I suspect that there's probably a cloud that passed in front of this nebula as we were getting some light from it. But this has what's called, this is an emission nebula, because there's a lot of baby stars that are within this bottom red cloud here. And those stars are exciting the hydrogen atoms that are within the cloud and causing the cloud to glow. And you'll see that there are these dark regions in the Trifid Nebula too. And these regions are dark not because of an absence of objects. Actually, there's so much matter and dust here that it's obscuring the starlight behind it. If we could peer within these regions, we would see tons of little baby stars, kind of like pearls on a string inside these dark regions. You may see some faint nebulosity up here, and that's basically reflection from these new stars that are turned on. Some of the light is reflecting off of the cloud up here. Now, I want to jump to Chile 2. hopefully we'll be able to get this one in before the telescope moves. But this is called the Cat's Paw Nebula. It's a really cool nebula. It was discovered by John Herschel, William Herschel's son, in 1837. And yeah, I can see that we're having a little bit of clouds affecting our image a little bit. The Cat's Paw Nebula, we moved a little fast, but it was a region of 4 little paw prints of star formation going on. And now the telescopes have moved on to what's called the Lobster Nebula. And the Lobster Nebula is also known as the War and Peace Nebula. And it's located near the Cat's Paw Nebula that the telescopes were just looking at. That's how why the telescopes were able to move so quickly from image to image, because this nebula is actually very close to the cat's paw. And as we get more and more light, like I said, we'll be able to see a little more of the nebula as more is collected. But what ends up happening is nebulae like this and nebula like the cat's paw, when they form stars of all different colors. They form red stars, yellow stars, white stars, blue stars. And what happens is the blue stars, they have a very short lifetime. And so very, very soon, almost immediately in astronomical terms, the blue stars that are formed go supernova. And this releases so much energy that it basically erases the nebula that's left over. And so this is why when we looked at the Pleiades earlier, we didn't see very much nebulosity, because in the Pleiades, the really big blue stars already went supernovae and it took out most of the nebula. And so there was only a little bit left over, which I thought was pretty neat. And one reason why I wanted to show the cat's paw and Lobster Nebula tonight is because there's a really cool dark constellation that the Incas saw in the sky that's associated with the Lobster Nebula and the Cat's Paw Nebula, that if you're in dark sky country, which I know that a lot of our listeners attendees are, you'll probably be able to see this the next time you go to and see the Milky Way. If you look towards where the center of the Milky Way is, the Inca actually saw many animals within the Milky Way. And one in particular is named Atak, the fox. And it looks something like this. And you may be able to see here that Atak actually has 2 red eyes. And those 2 red eyes are actually the Cat's Paw Nebula and the Lobster Nebula that we were just looking at. So I always find that really cool to find some cultural connections with these things, because, as humans, we've been looking at the sky since we've been humans. There wasn't civilization at one point, and when the sun went down, all we had was the stars to enjoy. And so we would see these things in the sky. And so it's so cool to see these things. So let's head back over to the telescopes and see if we got some color on the lobster yet. We almost do. I think we might have to wait maybe another minute or two.
John, you mentioned a phrase that some people might not be familiar with. And I was wondering if you could go into a little bit more detail. A dark constellation.
Dark constellation, absolutely. So a dark constellation, a talk here, this box is considered a dark constellation. And it's basically a constellation that the Inca saw within the dark regions of the Milky Way. The Inca actually saw a huge llama right here, with these 2 stars being the llama's eyes, for example. In Australia, the indigenous people of Australia actually, when they saw this portion of the night sky, they saw a huge emu in the dark portions of the sky, and that was one of their dark constellations. And I think it's in the same region. I think it's actually this. It is,
yeah, but it's on its side.
Yeah, it's so cool, these dark constellations. And again, the reason why it's dark is not due to an absence of things. It's actually, there's so much gas and dust when we look in that direction that it's obscuring the starlight behind it. Very similar to the Trifid Nebula that we were just looking at. Awesome. So I think she'd have some color. Oh, I went back just a little too quickly. We've already moved on to Jupiter. So this is Jupiter taking a look through our Chile 2 telescope. And we'll take a look at Jupiter through the Chile telescope again later on. So what I'd like us to do, and I know that I was planning on doing this in real time, but we can actually see a little dot right here and a little dot that's right there. And those are actually some of Jupiter's moons. In particular, this one on the left is Ganymede, which is the largest moon in the solar system. And this one on the left here is Io, which is a moon that's so close to Jupiter that the gravitational tidal forces are basically squeezing the moon like a sponge, and causing the surface to change so much that we've never been able to create a map of the surface of Io, because the next time we send something by it, it's already changed because of these gravitational effects squeezing it and causing volcanoes that are shooting up hundreds of miles to occur, which is pretty neat. Now we're reaching the end of the segment. And before I pass the mic back, I want to just jump on over to Canary 4, because we have a star in here that I'd just like to briefly talk about. This star is named Rigel. This is the brightest star in the constellation Orion, which we're going to spend most of our time in the second segment talking about things in the Orion constellation. This is actually a system of 4 stars, even though it looks like it's only one. Most of the light that we're seeing is coming from a blue supergiant star, which is extremely large and very bright, fusing many heavy elements in its core. Rigel happens to be the 7th brightest star in the night sky and is only 10 million years old. It's incredibly bright. Its luminosity has been calculated to be somewhere between 62,000 to 363,000 times brighter than our sun, which is impressive because only about 39 light years away is a cloud of gas that a Slooh member was able to capture a mosaic of. And it fits very well with the theme of tonight. It's a nebula that is known as the Witch Head Nebula. So this was captured with Slooh's telescopes using 2 different panels that the member has connected up together. And I think you can see that this looks like a witch head from the side profile. Rigel is about right here, if you can see where my mouse pointer is. And so you can kind of build a mental image that the light from Rigel is moving in this direction and reflecting off of this cloud towards us. So I love this. So that's all for this segment. It's gone by incredibly fast. Like I said, next we're going to investigate more spectacular things that are residing in the Orion constellation. Thank you.
That was awesome. Thank you so much. I'm so excited for part 2.
Awesome. Let me stop sharing my screen.
Excellent. Well, just want to talk with you guys for a little bit while we take this break. Feel free to stand up, stretch your legs, get a beverage if you need. I've got my water somewhere because I know I'll go hoarse talking. But again, wanted to thank you for all of you who are joining us on our Zoom call, all of you who are joining us on Facebook and YouTube as well. As we mentioned earlier, this is, we're wrapping up the tail end of Hill Country Night Sky Month. This is our 2nd year, and we are doing this with the Hill Country Alliance. So my name is Dawn Davies. I'm the Night Sky Program Coordinator for Hill Country Alliance. And John, I know, has introduced himself, but I also want to introduce here Cliff. If you want to give say hello. Cliff is the Program Director for Hill Country Alliance. Liking the shirt tonight, matches the glasses, very nice.
Right on.
So for those of you who may not be very familiar with us, Hill Country Alliance, we are a conservation nonprofit organization in the Hill Country, and we put emphasis on preservation and conservation with land with water, with the night skies, and community. So we have folks that work in all of those regions. We partner with the public, we partner with landowners, with other organizations, with a lot of volunteer groups. And in particular for Night Sky Month, we partner with a lot of our night sky friendly groups. And we'll be talking about those in a little bit. But Hill Country Night Sky Month is their second year going, and it has involved an entire month full of events such as this one, a lot of in-person and virtual functions. Folks have gone out and spread the word Hill Country and Texas wide, talking about all kinds of ways to preserve the night sky, things that we can do to better our night sky and decrease light pollution, which is our main concern. And I'm just going to share my screen here and introduce you to a few things that we've been doing. Let's see. Will I open up my screen here? So if you go to our landing page, which is nightskymonth.com, you will see a full flurry of information, but a few things that I wanted to just highlight about what we've been doing over the past month. As I mentioned, we've had a lot of folks going out there and getting involved, providing educational opportunities, ways for people to learn more about Night Sky Month. And a lot of those are spearheaded by our Friends of the Night Sky groups. And these are actually just a few of them here. There's a couple that we don't have logos for. For instance, in Lampasas County, we've got a group started. We've got a few more started in Bee Cave and Briarcliff. So you can see we have an amazing array of Friends of the Night Sky groups all over the Hill Country. So most likely where some of you are living now. And these folks are volunteers. They work with the community. They work with, like I mentioned, landowners, other business owners. They work with their local city and county officials to try to pass ordinances, resolutions, and in many ways, proclamations that we've been getting a lot of in support for Night Sky Month. Here's a wonderful list. I think we're up about 13 or 14 different proclamations across the Hill Country in various counties, proclaiming October as Hill Country Night Sky Month. And we've even had a few resolutions from communities that are putting it out there that they want to become more night sky friendly, or in some cases, their intent to become a certified community by something called the IDA, which is the International Dark Sky Association. So we've had a lot of really great folks, great communities, great jurisdictions proclaiming that they are for darker skies and less light pollution. We also have some information on press releases and Night Sky Month in the news. Even more so exciting is our calendar. We've had over, I think, almost 24 events happening throughout the entire month. You can view a lot of that information here and see what has happened previously. But we do still have a few more events that are occurring. An event in Wimberley tomorrow called Boo Hole, and a night hike, which has been taking place in McKinney Falls State Park every Saturday for the month of October. And we also have what just started 2 days ago, which is a globe observation session. We're going to talk about that after the second session with John. But to give you kind of a sneak peek at some of the activities that have been happening, I'm going to show you some pictures from some activities that we've gotten from folks. Let me change screens here. Give me one moment. Let me pop out of this real quick. Figuring out this whole navigation between multiple screens. All right, and we're going to go back and share. There we go. So these are some great photos from Lago Vista. They had a star party. That is actually just one of, I think they said 10 telescopes that they had out on site, showing folks the night sky, providing a whole bunch of youth activities. Here they are stringing beads that both represent the planets of the solar system. And I think they also had some solar reactive beads, which are really fascinating and fun to play with. Oh, great. I'm seeing some links, some questions in the chat, and I will definitely get that information to you. Um, Also, back for the second year in a row, the Hill Country Howl and Dance in Wimberley. So they're howling at the moon on the 20th, community-wide event. I'm guessing this is some sort of nighttime dark sky conga line going through here as part of their dance. And a great example of just one of the proclamations. This is a proclamation being signed by the city of Wimberley, proclaiming Hill Country Night Sky Month in October. And we've also had many events featured in the news. This was actually from a star party held in Llano County. It was the very first of the new Llano County Friends of the Night Skies. So a lot of things that are happening in and around the area. And we're hoping that it just continues to build just more amazing momentum on this great program that we've got going with our Friends of the Night Skies, and just helping to preserve the night skies for us and for future generations. But I don't want to take up too much time. I want to make sure, John, do you want to just give us a little bit of information about if people are interested in participating in Slooh or utilizing Slooh's services?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, totally can. Maybe I could share screen again.
Absolutely, please do.
Awesome. So I mentioned a little bit about Slooh earlier. We have 10 telescopes spread across the Canary Islands Observatory and the Chile Observatory, and these telescopes are at pristine locations that are definitely dark sky. So if it happens to be a little too bright where you're at, Slooh's there for you. And by using Slooh, even if you're in a dark sky region, it helps you by seeing what some of these objects look like in telescopes when you can process the images and stuff. And so then when you look at them with your telescopes, you can say, wow, okay, I can see some of these regions that I saw over on Slooh, or even vice versa. Go out and capture some things with your own telescopes, then you can come back to Slooh and get a different perspective. And it's kind of a fun thing about it. You know, we looked at Jupiter tonight from the Chile. We all go outside and look at Jupiter with our own eyes from our own locations. We just look at the same planet from two different places on this Earth at practically the same time. And I think that that's kind of a cool thing to say. Now, there's a lot of things that we can do on Slooh, and this here is what we call the Slooh dashboard. And I like to think of it as like the central hub for the platform. Everything you can do kind of begins here. So this thing right here is called the quest map, and you can see it front and center. And what a Slooh quest is it's a learning activity where you can go on and it teaches you about how to use the telescopes, teaches you about astronomical concepts, and it is a fun activity that you can do to do the telescopes with. So I just want to show you Nifty Nebulae real quick. This is one of my favorite quests. I'm just going to kind of breeze through it a little bit. And all of the quests, they have different steps to them. And if we just look at Emission Nebulae, for example, you can see that there's information where you get to learn about what emission nebulae are. You get some example emission nebulae to capture with the telescopes, and it gives you some explanations on, exactly what you need to do to go and get the images, and you put your images within the quest. So this is an image that I caught with the telescopes at some point, and also, is a fun way to learn why they're red, and you get some analysis going on. And at the end of the quest, this is the really fun part, is after you've done all of this learning and exploring space with these quests, you end up generating a poster at the end that showcases all of the images that you captured with the telescopes. So these quests are very popular with our schools that use Slooh, because these basically are a fun way for students to learn everything they can about astronomy. I want to give you a example of what a few other Quest posters look like. This is the ABCs of Slooh recently launched Quest, where you capture an object with each letter of the starting with each letter of the alphabet, and also learn a little bit about the history of the English language. Here's Cosmic Recycling, which students make and members make in the Life and Death of Stars quest. Here's a Lunar Phases quest. So we have quests that go through lots of different flavors. So it's not all just dry astronomy. You actually are learning a lot of facets of the night sky. So I just want to show the quest map one more time to show how some of these quests are separated. So there's a learning zone in the bottom here that has starter quests to get you going on the platform. Then there's discovery quests where you get to learn about different astronomical concepts, measurement quests, which actually ask you to do some measuring, do a little bit of math with your images and learn more about, the night sky. Then in our observation zone, there's the collection quests, like collecting all the lunar phases or collecting all of the Messier objects, for example. We also have footsteps quests where you follow in the footsteps of famous astronomers, like repeating Clyde Tombaugh's discovery of Pluto, which in this quest, that's what members actually do. Make an animation of the night sky and you can see Pluto moving with respect to the stars. It's pretty neat. Then there's moments quests. These quests are all about some special moment that's happening. So for example, last year we had the Great Conjunction. We also had a solar eclipse in December. And for these quests, we have special moments quests for them. So students and members can go on, learn about the event, and then make a poster commemorating their event. I thought I had a couple posters prepped for that, but I guess I didn't. But the one quest that I'd like to show for the footsteps is called Footsteps of Apollo. And this is a quest that's all about Project Apollo and going from Apollo 1 even all the way up to Apollo 17. And what members are able to do is they're taught where the landings were. And then they're asked to capture images of the moon where the day-night line, the terminator, is near the landing site. And the reason why is because it's a bit easier to see the surface features when you're looking near the terminator. Kind of like my background. It's a bit easier to see the features on this side of me. I'm trying to look at my screen, this side of me, because this is near the terminator as opposed to this side, which is not. And then they're asked to actually place a lunar module sticker on the locations of where the lunar landing sites are. And then they get to commemorate with this poster and put in when their missions went off and so forth. But there's also some artistic expression that can be done here too. On the left side, these column of moons all have the day side on the right, whereas this column of moons has the day side on the left. And so it's up to you how you would like to form your poster. And so in that way, you can investigate your artistic expression, like I said. Now, Slooh also holds their own star parties as well, just like what we're doing right now. And we have star parties surrounding big events like eclipses and conjunctions and oppositions, where we would have Slooh astronomer like myself, or we also have Paul Cox, our chief astronomical officer. We'll come on and we'll talk about these events. But we also have recently launched last summer a Discord server where we're holding star parties on there as well. And so members will come on and actually put on their own star parties, and other members are able to come and join and have a lot of fun building a worldwide community of amateur astronomers and astronomer enthusiasts. And it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. And there's so much more things that we can do here on Slooh that I feel like I haven't even scratched the surface. So I definitely urge you to check out, hop on over to slooh.com, see if this is something that you might be interested in. Yeah. So with that, I want to jump back on the telescopes because I don't want to miss this beautiful star right here. This is the star Betelgeuse. This is another very bright star that's in Orion. It's gonna the telescopes are gonna move in a moment. That's why I want to jump on it. And you know that it's near Halloween whenever Betelgeuse is out. You just make sure you don't say the name 3 times, repeating. And I think Betelgeuse is probably the easiest star to point out in the Orion constellation because it's very visibly reddish orange. And last year, it underwent some unprecedented dimming, and we really weren't sure what was going on. We thought that it may be nearing the end of its life, and it may potentially go supernova. And if that were to happen, the supernova explosion and the remnant that it would make would be brighter than the full moon and a permanent fixture in our skies, even during the day for about a year. But it turns out that all it was a cloud of gas or cloud of dust passed between us and Betelgeuse, making its appearance dim. But if it did turn into a supernova and a supernovae remnant, it would look something like this. This is called the Crab Nebula. This is a supernova remnant. So one star caused this remnant to occur. And what I think one fascinating thing about this, I know this isn't in Orion, but this just so happened to be what the telescopes were looking at next. The ancient Chinese astronomers actually watched this supernova go off. In fact, this wasn't the only supernova that Chinese astronomers saw back then. They used to call these supernova events guest stars because it would be a star that would appear out of nowhere and then it would disappear again. It would slowly fade away. And we were able to, in the 1920s, Dutch astronomer Oort was able to measure, and I think Hubble was involved with this as well. They were able to measure the expansion speeds of the supernova remnant getting larger and larger. And with that, you can turn the clocks in reverse and say, well, if it's moving out with this acceleration, well, how long ago was all of the stuff at once? And it coincided with the ancient Chinese observations of the supernova going off. So it's like a confirmation. So I think that's really neat. So, but let's jump back into the Orion constellation. We're going to head on over to the Canary 1 telescope. And in here, we are looking at what's called the Horsehead Nebula. And this is a nebula that's pretty close to the belt stars of Orion. I don't know if we can see this down here. Here's a schematic of Orion. Here's the 3 belt stars. The belt star names going from left to right are Alnitak, Alnilam, and Mintaka. It's really fun to say once you've actually memorized those 3 star names. And it's a little faint to see right now, but this is what's called the Horsehead Nebula. And it's called a dark nebula because it's mainly like a dark constellation or that dark feature that we saw in the Trifid Nebula. You can just barely make it out right here. In fact, let me zoom in a little bit. So this region right here, this is the Horsehead Nebula. And there's a bunch of stars that are forming within that cloud. And you can kind of make out the horse's head here. I almost see like the horse's head right here, and it's looking in this particular direction. It's actually looking towards the star Alnitak. Sometimes if the conditions are sky conditions are really good, some people can see an entire body of a horse in the nebula. Others, they actually see a seahorse when they look at the Horsehead Nebula. I can see the seahorse in this for sure. So we're getting more and more light, and the image is getting really impressive. This Horsehead Nebula is about 1,375 light years from us. So we're looking at light that's taken 1,375 years to make it to us. It's pretty crazy to think about. The diameter of the Horsehead Nebula is about 7 light years. Okay. Now, the next object that we're going to look at is in our Canary 3 telescope. So I want to get us queued up on that. But I almost feel like the more and more we look at this, the more color we were able to see, which is awesome. Ooh, here's the Orion Nebula. We'll come back to this. We'll come back to this, I promise. But first, let's move on over to Canary 3, because there's another really cool nebula near Alnitak that I'd like to show us. And this nebula is called the Flame Nebula. So we can definitely see why they call it the Flame Nebula. This looks like a fire, a flaming fire going on. And this star right here, this is Alnitak. This is the leftmost star in Orion's belt. Did you know that there was a nebula literally right next door? It's kind of new for me when I first started working here, to be completely honest. This is a blue supergiant star, Alnitak. It's like I said, the easternmost belt star of Orion, and the light from this star is responsible for exciting the atoms in the Flame Nebula. So it's causing hydrogen atoms there, the electrons within those hydrogen atoms, to move to a high energy level and then collapse back down to a lower energy level and release a bunch of photons, mainly red photons, that we can see here. Now, this column in the middle, this is yet another dark feature. There isn't an absence of gas or stars here. It's just there's so much stuff here that it's obscuring the starlight behind it. And you may be asking then, well, wait, what about these little stars that are here? Well, these are actually foreground stars. These are stars that are actually close to us. Like this one right here that's near the tip of the Flame Nebula. This star is about 100 light years away from us, but the entire nebula itself is 1,350 light years away. So it's really weird to start thinking about the 3D aspects of all of these things in space. Now, one thing that I want to show you, and I didn't mention this, but Slooh also has clubs. We have private clubs for our schools that are associated with us. Each classroom has its own private club, but we also have public clubs that are surrounding different things like the moon, like the sun. And in particular, we have an astrophotography club. And this is an observation that somebody posted in our astrophotography club. And this is a mosaic going from the Horsehead Nebula all the way to the Flame Nebula. And this was posted by our Slooh member, Jamor. And so this kind of connects up those two nebulae we were looking at now. The Flame Nebula and the Horsehead Nebula are actually associated with each other. They're connected here if we could see some more of the gas and dust. So I always find that really fascinating, that these things in the night sky that we see, they're actually pretty close to each other sometimes. Now,
so do we see more of the connection if we had like an image in the infrared, for instance?
Yes, totally we would in the infrared. Yes, what ends up happening, especially with dust, is the dust obscures the light, but then it kind of re-radiates that light in the infrared. Yeah, that's totally right on. Now, we were looking at the Orion Nebula a moment ago in Canary 1. And I'm going to take a peek now over there again, just to see what it looks like. And because we should be getting a little more detail than we had before. Awesome, we've got it. We captured enough light to where we can see some color. So just below the belt. So if you know where the belt, see the belt stars of Orion, it's actually a good spot if you can see this where in the sky here. We got the belt stars. Betelgeuse was the red star that was above and to the left. Rigel, which was the star we looked at right before the break, was the bright star that was on the bottom to the right. If you look kind of between the belt stars and Rigel, you might see a small little smudge or a cloud. You can tell it's totally not a star, but it almost looks like a cloud in the sky. That's what the Orion Nebula is. So you're looking at this object here. This is the closest region of star formation to Earth at 1,344 light years. It's a bubble of emission and reflection nebulae that's encasing one of the youngest star clusters known, called the trapezium. It's so bright in this region that we can't see it with our telescopes here. But if you look at Orion Nebula with a setup telescope, the trapezium cluster is very easily noticeable. This cluster is only 300,000 years old. It's about the same age as our species is, which is pretty crazy to think about. Now, when I look at this, I kind of see a celestial hooded figure where this is like the head, and these are outstretched arms, kind of grabbing a bunch of young baby stars. In the Canary 3 telescope, I also am trained on the Orion constellation, but the Canary 3 has a little bit bigger field of view than Canary 1 does. You can kind of see that's how big Canary 1 is, but Canary 3 is a little bit bigger than that. And I love looking at the Orion Nebula in Canary 3 because of how big the field of view is. And Canary 3 does a good job at kind of teasing out some of the fainter features of nebulae. So when I look at this, I love this southern loop that I can see in the Orion Nebula. We can't see that in Canary 1 because the field of view is a little too small. But now when I see the southern loop, all of a sudden the Orion Nebula turns into like jaws of a celestial shark about to feast on a bunch of young baby stars. Now, what I think is really cool is astronomers have been looking at a lot of these young baby stars in the Orion Nebula, and they've been able to find what are called protoplanetary disks around them, which are basically, you can think of them as sort of like, if you think of the rings of Saturn, you can think that after a star forms, all of the material that didn't make it into the star forms a ring around the star. That's what's called a protoplanetary disk. Over time, all of that material will coalesce and turn into planets. So we're actively watching new planets forming in the Orion Nebula too. Now there's a special little thing that's occurring up here as well. There's another little nebula that we can see. This one is called the Running Man Nebula. And that is going to be the next object that we're going to look at tonight. Now, before we move on over to that, because it's going to happen here in a couple moments, I'm going to jump back on Canary 1 because we should be getting even more detail. We should be able to see even more detail than we did when we saw just it just a moment ago. Oh yeah, totally. Now, every time you're on the live telescopes on Slooh, which again, they're broadcasting every night, you can snap pictures for your collection by hitting this little camera button that's on the top here. So I hit that, bam, and now this image is saved in my collection. So if I were to go on the nifty nebulae quest, I can use my image of the Orion Nebula that I captured during the Hill Country Alliance's Star Party to commemorate the end of the Dark Sky Month. Could use that in my poster if I'd like to. Now, what members are able to do by controlling telescopes is they actually schedule missions on the telescope. So if I were to click on the Q here, this shows what the telescope is planning on looking at next. So we're going to look at the Running Man Nebula next, right at 8:10. Then afterwards, looks like somebody's looking at the Atlas Comet. Here's another thing. So these are all objects that other members have scheduled on the telescopes. What's really cool about the way that the platform works is everybody can log on and take a look at what the telescopes are looking at, snap pictures and save for your collection. But if you were to schedule a mission, you don't have to be on the platform to get your images. And I think that's probably one of the coolest things about it is if you scheduled a mission that happened to be at 3 in the morning when you definitely don't want to be on the platform, it's totally okay. Where telescopes are robotic. They're going to move to that location in the sky and capture those images. And when you wake up the next morning, boom, they're going to be right there in your photo collection ready for you to take a look at. So I find that to be one of the coolest things about this, about the platform.
That's amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, I love it. Um, what other things could I talk about this? So the Orion Nebula is also called M42. And I always get this question a lot. What does this M stand for? And it stands for Charles Messier. And Charles Messier was a comet hunter that was around the 1700s. And he was trying to come up with a list of objects that were not stars, but they certainly weren't comets either. Basically, he's trying to figure out which portions of the sky not to look at. And he first devised his list in the mid 1700s, and which only contained about 45 objects. In about the 1780s, I think it was his last addition to the list, and it contained, I think, about 103 objects. And then about 100 years later, some historians going through Charles Messier's notes were able to pull out 7 more objects. And so now today, the Messier object list contains 110 of perhaps some of the most spectacular objects in the night sky. So now the telescopes have moved on to the Running Man Nebula. And you'll notice that we can't really see it too much at first, but we actually caught a little meteorite in our telescopes here, a little shooting star. I don't know if you can see that here. You can tell that that's one of those because it's not perfectly horizontal on the image or vertical on the image. And I could tell it's not a satellite either, because satellites, they rotate as they're orbiting. And there's going to be a particular angle where there's a lot of sunlight reflecting to us. And so satellites will show up as kind of like a little pulsing line instead of just a straight line. Pretty cool, I think. But we'll come back to Canary 1. Let's jump back to Canary 3, because we're also looking at Running Man on Canary 3 as well. And different telescopes are kind of designed to do different things. Our Canary 3 telescope is our deep sky telescope. And a lot of our members use Canary 3 to make those really awesome astrophotography images that you see all the time everywhere. Oh, would you look at that? We caught the shooting star in this telescope as well. That is really awesome. Now I'm going to make sure to capture this one for my collection. I think this might be my new Running Man Nebula shot. I love it when these things appear in there. And also, you can see here's the top of the Orion Nebula just down here. Again, fascinating that all these things are right next to each other in the night sky. So if you don't see the Running Man Nebula, here's the Running Man's head. Here's his body, and then here's his outstretched arms, one going in this direction and one going in that direction. Perhaps he's running to the left. We're seeing him run. And this is known as a reflection nebula. So what's happening here is mainly this star right here, its name is 45 Orionis. It's about 360 light years away from us, is incredibly bright, and it's shining light onto this gas cloud, which is about 1,500 light years from Earth. And the light from that star is reflecting off of that cloud and coming right back at us. And just like many of the objects that we've seen tonight, we do have a dark feature going across the nebula itself, where there's new stars being formed in there. Now, you may be wondering, well, what about these two stars? These stars might be, participating in the reflection as well. And in fact, they're not. I misspoke just a moment ago. This star that's actually doing the reflection here is 884 light years from us. So it's actually a bit closer to the nebula than I initially said. This leftmost star is 360 light years from us. This middle star here is actually 5,747 light years from us, about 4 times further than the nebula itself. So again, when we look at these objects, we can't think of them as being right next to each other. Sometimes they may be really far away from each other when we look at them in the sky. Super fascinating, I think. This star that's doing the reflecting or emitting the light that's doing the reflecting does have a protoplanetary disk around it too. So there are planets forming around this star right now. So let's take a look at what this looks like in Canary 1. We perhaps have gotten enough light to where might be able to get a little bit of color. Oh, not yet, but we'll stick on this because it's really nice to catch that moment when the color comes in, the image just really pops out. The Running Man is one of my favorite wintertime nebulae to look at, mainly because of how close it is to the Orion Nebula and with how popular the Orion Nebula is. It is rather dim, and so Messier missed this object for his list. This is part of a different catalog of objects called the New General Catalog. It's not really new. It was put together in the 1800s, so I think it should be renamed the OGC, the Old General Catalog, but who listens to me, right? I don't know. So while we wait for some of the light to come in, we can check out some of the other telescopes too, because early on in the evening, we saw a glimpse of Jupiter. And I have Jupiter again in one of the Chile telescopes. So if we go over there, we can see if the sky conditions got a little better. So what do we got? Well, looks like it's a little bit more cloudy than it was earlier. And this happens sometimes on Slooh. You know, we can't control the weather yet, so sometimes it's a little cloudy. Now let's hop on over to Chile 2, because I also scheduled Saturn in here as well. I wanted to make sure that we all caught another glimpse of Jupiter and Saturn before we ended our night here. Oh, this is looking really good. I'm going to take a picture of that for sure, and then let's zoom in on this. So I don't know if you remember our Saturn shot that we saw earlier. It was a little blurry, honestly, but now sky got darker. It's looking a lot better now than it was earlier. One thing that I think is really cool, wow, that's so good. We can actually see the shadow of the planet of Saturn onto the rings behind it. What's really fascinating is this kind of tells us a little bit about where it is in the solar system. When there's a planetary configuration called opposition, and this is basically, it's like the closest approach that the planets get, the outer planets, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune. It's the closest approach that those planets get to Earth. And it's also when those planets are on the opposite side of the sky from the sun. And so if we were to look at Saturn when it was at opposition, we wouldn't see the shadow because the shadow would be behind the planet. If we were to see Saturn before opposition, we would actually see the shadow on the left side of the planet. So this indication is telling us that the sun is actually in this direction that my mouse pointer is moving in. And so it's not quite at opposition yet. It's kind of fun. Another really cool thing is you can see the rings of Saturn too. Right now, we can see even the space between the rings of Saturn. The ring orientation changes. Saturn rotates on its axis just like the Earth does. And so as Saturn orbits around the sun and goes from its solstice to its other solstice, its winter to summer solstice, the angle that the rings are at changes. And so sometimes the rings will be directly edge onto us. And when that happens, Saturn just looks like a planet with a line going right through it. You can't even really make out that there's rings. I find that really fascinating. So that's actually going to be happening in about 2 years or so. The ring orientation will be that edge on like that. Fascinating. So let's do a quick jump back to Canary 1 and see what the Running Man looks like. We should have some color to it now. What do we got? Awesome, gorgeous. We got some color to the stars, and we can see a little color to the nebula itself. You can definitely see that sky conditions weren't exactly the best, but they were good enough for us to really explore these sites tonight. And so I think that we've had a really fantastic evening tonight, and I hope that you've had a great night exploring space with us and Slooh. Slooh is breaking ground in the education market this past year. So if you know anybody related to education, a teacher, a parent, basically anyone associated with education, we'd love for you to let them know about slooh.org. This is our nonprofit foundation whose goal is to see 1 million students nationwide explore, engage, and learn about the space with Slooh. For everyone else, please check us out at slooh.com. Now, even though our star party has ended, the party is still raging on at Slooh. Every night, all night, members are controlling the telescopes and imaging fantastic sights from our universe. A special shout out of appreciation to the Hill Country Alliance for what you all stand for in terms of dark skies. I can tell you firsthand that the number of stars visible with the naked eye from my home in Las Vegas, Nevada, has decreased every year since I can remember. Preserving our night sky is a very special charge because it's our only way to connect with the rest of the universe. So if you find yourself somewhere where the sky is too bright at night, just remember that Slooh is there with telescopes and pristine locations, ready and waiting to be controlled by you. I want to extend a huge thank you to Cliff, Dawn, and the rest of the Hill Country Alliance, and especially you for joining us tonight. We hope you enjoyed our journey through the Milky Way and our special stop to take in the wonders of the Orion constellation. Have a great evening, everyone, and good night.
John, that was amazing. I love that we were able to look at the images, both in, the black and white, the monochromatic, and then to also, be able to go back and take a look at the color not too much longer later. I mean, that last image you left us with, I took a screenshot because I had to. And I think it's given me more incentive to get a membership and to start doing more star parties like this, because it's just phenomenal how much you can reach people, from their home, from where they sit, and expose them to so many amazing things in the night sky. And I mean, I'm sorry that you are where you are in Las Vegas, because that definitely is not an ideal spot for an astronomer like you. But fortunately, you do have Slooh to depend on. So that's really great. I think there's a lot more opportunities I see for us doing things like this with Slooh in the future. So thank you so much.
Awesome. You're welcome. And like I said, so happy to be a part of this event. Thank
Excellent.
you.
Well, we definitely look forward to having you back to come next year. So I just wanted to leave you guys with a few things that some of which we've talked about this evening, and a few more sort of bits of information. First off, huge shout out to our hosts. Let me go to my screen here. I picked the wrong screen. Let's see, let's try this again. There we go, to our sponsors for Hill Country Night Sky Month, Ghost Note Brewing and the Kerrville Folk Festival. They've been great supporters of the work we've been doing with night sky preservations, and specifically with Hill Country Night Sky Month. Wanted to just pop on back here. So aside from our Hill Country Night Sky Month portion of our website, we have an extensive amount of information here on the Night Sky Issues page. So I just wanted to show you kind of what we've got going on. We've got 6 main sections here, one of which is Hill Country Night Sky Month. We have an entire page devoted to what light pollution is and why it matters. So if you're not as familiar with light pollution and you'd like to be more informed, like to know why it's so harmful, why it's so detrimental, and what you can do to help the efforts in the Hill Country and also outside of Hill Country, wherever you live, light pollution affects us. I think it's up to about 30% of the world's population live where they can still see the Milky Way. And in the state of Texas, that's even a smaller percentage. It's closer to about 20 or even 10%. And in a recent meeting I was in, I learned the most horrific fact is that we are actually losing light faster than ever before. We are being affected by light pollution. Light pollution is increasing by 2% every year. So obviously the efforts that we do here with the Hill Country Alliance, that we do with folks like Slooh and our other partners are really important to trying to preserve our night sky and keep what we do have and improve upon it. We also have an entire section on night sky friendly lighting and how that applies to your home in properly shielding using the right color correlated temperature and also directing it and using it only when necessary. Again, as I mentioned, we've got our night sky friendly groups, and those groups all around the Hill Country work with creating night sky friendly neighborhoods and night sky friendly businesses through our 2 programs that we offer. And there's so much more information here. I don't want to spend too much longer on it, but I do want to show a couple of kind of really staggering images here. This is just one section of the Hill Country area, but are some of our brightest cities. So Austin and down here into San Antonio. And just to give you an idea, I mean, these are very bright areas, but we still have a fair bit of the Hill Country that we still consider to be excellent or good night skies. So we are working really hard to preserve what we have, to improve upon what needs to be brought up to that excellent level. This is a wonderful analysis that was done by Amy Jackson of Starry Sky Austin. So a couple other things. I've mentioned a few times the International Dark Sky Association. This is also a really great website for resources. They work with communities, with parks, with regions, with all kinds of places to certify international dark sky places. And those are in the form of communities, those are in the form of parks, of reserves, sanctuaries, and urban night sky places. And just to give you an idea, this is all of the locations here on their Find a Dark Sky Place map that have been certified by the IDA. And we are fortunate to have a large number of those within the state of Texas. And in the Hill Country alone where we have 4 international dark sky communities, 3 international dark sky parks with more coming on board, 2 international dark sky developments of distinction. And soon we're hoping to have the first urban night sky place. So one of the last things I want to leave you with is obviously going from here to this amazing star party. I'm hoping you all feel charged to get out under the night sky. And I want to introduce you to Globe at Night, which is a phenomenal online citizen science program. So it's an opportunity for average citizens like us, the non-scientists, to contribute to scientific research, and in particular, to contribute to raising awareness about the impact of light pollution. And what this organization does is they designate timeframes, usually about a week each month. And in the case of this month, we actually had one coming into the beginning of October, and we have one that just started on the 27th. And what they do is they assign a constellation to those timeframes. Right now, like I said, this one's going from October 27th to November 5th. They're identifying Perseus, and they've got some great resources. They show you where to look for Perseus, the constellation in the night sky. And once you've had an opportunity to go out and observe it with your own eyes, no equipment is required. You can then go on and make a report. And what they're asking you to do is list when you observed this constellation, what time, where you're located, and they make it really easy. They give you 7 selections of magnitude that they want you to try to match to what you observed where you're located, what the sky conditions are like. If you have any comments that you want to make about those conditions itself, any comments you want to make about your location. And if you happen to own and use a sky quality meter, so that's a meter we use to measure the brightness of sky, you can enter that data here click submit, and this information gets logged and is made available to scientists doing research in night sky preservation and the impact of light pollution. And it's also information that you can download and go into their system and look up maps specific to your region or all over the world, and do it based by date or by year as well. So just a few really great things to look into online, and also going out tonight after we get off of this wonderful virtual star party and go have a star party of your own and look up and find Perseus and hopefully log some information for Globe at Night. But other than that, I'd love, we've got a few folks that have hung around till the very end. Thank you so much. Feel free to take your cameras off stop video, show us who you are if you'd like, or if you have any questions, if you want to make any comments, if you want to have a chat about anything specific to light pollution. I'm going to go ahead and end the live stream here, but we will keep the party going. And I know Cliff has got some great music to play for us, hopefully a little bit low in the background. And yeah, thanks so much for joining us, and have a great night. Stick around if you'd like.